Hey everybody, welcome to the WhatCulture Gaming Podcast. I'm your host, Scott Tailford, joined by Ash Millman.
Oh, hello.
Hi, and Josh Brown.
Oh, hello.
Hello, and we're going to have a big old debate as to Fallout versus Elder Scrolls, two storied franchises with two massive fan bases alongside, because Fallout 76 is currently tearing up the controversial waves as to how it's landing.
Tearing up something, all right.
Oh, God.
It is kind of in pieces, but we thought we'd sort of, pair off these two franchises in a series of different categories, because Josh, you're a big Fallout fan.
Well, here's the thing, right?
Go on.
I'm joined to do this on the Fallout side, because I do think Fallout is my baby, right?
Good.
But I bloody love the Elder Scrolls, like Skyrim, Oblivion, two of my favourite games of all time.
Right.
So I love everything, and I'm just happy to be here.
Well, that's good, but for the next 25 minutes, you are representing Fallout. Therefore,
Yeah.
Fallout is your favourite game, and to hell with the Elder Scrolls.
Nerd.
Okay.
Yes, nerd.
Nerd and loser.
Whereas Ash, you're in big support of Elder Scrolls,
I
and
am.
Fallout is complete toss.
Yeah,
as far as you're
that's
concerned.
right. You're damn right there, Scott.
Good stuff. So, as far as Bethesda's concerned, they came on board acquiring the Fallout IP from Black Isle Studios in 2004, and I think a lot of people came on board with Fallout 3. So, in terms of pairing, we're not going to go game by game, but you guys can draw from any games if you want to, depending on what comes up. But in terms of just reeling off some popular titles that people will have played and will know, on the Fallout side, we've got Fallout 3, we've got New Vegas, Fallout 4, and Fallout 76. I think that's the majority of the ones that people played. And on the Scrolls side, Morrowind, Oblivion, Skyrim, and Elder Scrolls Online. I don't think that many people played Elder Scrolls Arena or Elder Scrolls Daggerfall. So we've got 4 titles on either side that tend to be the sort of most talked about ones. And with that in mind, I thought we should open with general game mechanics and sheer playability. Ash, would you like to open in terms of how well the Scrolls games play?
Ooh, well, they all play great, is the thing. I think, well, the Elder Scrolls in general is a fantastic game, fantastically made. The only thing that I'm going to mention straight away as a negative is maybe the creation engine needs working on, because it's constantly recycled, as we see in the Fallout games. So it's gotten to the point where it is very much like a recyclable at this point. But no, I think playability-wise, it's fantastic. It's engaging. It's immersive. Everything about it, that side of things is fantastic. I don't know what else to say. It's really good.
Have you always been a fan of the hack and slash, the melee combat versus something like the range stuff in Fallout?
Oh, 100%. I think what this will boil down to essentially is fantasy versus science fiction, which we're going to try and avoid, because there is plenty of nuance between these games that doesn't just come down to that. But for me, fantasy has always been a reigning champion of gaming in loads of different formats, and the Elder Scrolls embodies that perfectly as like the classic fantasy, exploring everywhere, there's dragons and monsters sort of game.
True. I think we'll try and stick to things that are sort of able to be objectively measured, such as responsiveness and tightness of controls and things like that. And so, yes, it is worth pointing out that obviously there's a subjective side to this debate, because if you just love sci-fi, you're going to go down the Fallout route. But Josh, what are your thoughts on Fallout's mechanics?
I think there's it's a hugely subjective thing, and but
go on.
But
yes.
I think when you get to Fallout, there's kind of more ways to play in a way. Hear me out. I know that Elder Scrolls,
I'm only
you've got magic. You can have all the different. You can have big hammers. You can have swords. You can stealthily. You can talk your way through things, and you can to an extent with Fallout as well. Because I know you're basically just shooting things, but you've got all the different weapons. You've got all the different builds. You can go melee if you want, or you can and then there's VATS. That's what I just remembered. And then there is VATS.
It is worth talking about VATS.
I think makes adds a sort of variety to the entire ways to play. I'm just not even making sentences at the moment.
I know what you mean,
but when it comes to sort of the stability of it and the actual feel of playing it, I think Elder Scrolls is kind of better, at least as a whole, because I know I'm defending Fallout.
Yeah, I know.
No, I'd agree with your line of thought. I think Elder Scrolls does pip Fallout for having a wide range of weapons and magic, which is a really big part of it. And I think if you want to go into VATS a little bit more, I think that's the main part that actually is quite interesting for Fallout, because it's the way that they've altered the RPG. I'm not a big fan of it, because I feel like it sucks all the fun out of actually aiming, shooting, and doing tactical things.
See, I'm going to leap in. I have no side in this fight, although Scrolls is better than Fallout, but I have no side in this fight. But it is interesting talking about the implementation of VATS, because obviously the first 2 Fallout games were turn-based, and that was kind of Bethesda's way of maintaining an air of taking your time and planning your moves and stuff. But even in that sense, Fallout 76 has kind of ditched it and just made it like an auto-aim thing.
Yeah.
So what's your general thoughts on that?
Even though they've got faster-firing weapons, you've got SMGs, you've got shotguns, you've got it should be more immediate. Yet I think Fallout it's kind of slower, more methodical in a way. With Scrolls, you're sort of just running into the fray and just sort of slashing and hoping for the best. Whereas with Fallout, when you get VATS and if you're going back to the turn-based thing, there are sort of you sort of have to plan your route through levels and through sort of the map in a bit more contemplative way, I'd say. Like the shooting, and that's partly because the shooting mechanics are bad. That's what I was trying to tie it back into earlier on. Like in Fallout 3, you can't aim down sights, and you just sort of got to. It's like a game of numbers of whether you're going to hit it, and that's why you need to kind of rely on VATS. And a lot of people don't like that, but it's sort of, for me, it harkens back to those kind of not like the turn-based, sort of more pen and paper style of like combat. Whereas to me, Skyrim sort of feels better in the moment. It is sort of more immediate, but it is kind of just like.
It's very hit and hope. It's very flaily, which I think is something that, across all the installments, I don't think Scrolls has ever really nailed down a really good sense of riposting and dodging and moving, which is something that obviously Dark Souls kind of nailed, and that kind of changed a lot of the way that people approach third-person action or first-person action or whatever. But in terms of the two, let's move on to storytelling, and we can talk about the depth of lore. Now, Ash did write a big old thing on why Elder Scrolls is definitively better than Fallout, full of herself as she is, and you can go and watch that video if you want. So I've sort of picked a couple of things from that to sort of debate out in terms of bringing both sides to it. So in terms of the way that the worlds are laid out, in terms of Tamriel versus whichever location you want to pick from Fallout, how do you guys think that they handle their lore in terms of injecting it into those worlds and making you want to explore and find those different things? Because in Scrolls, you've got all the books are everywhere and there's different things that you can find. In Fallout, you've got the audio recordings. How detailed do you think those worlds come across?
I mean, I think they're both ridiculously detailed.
Definitely.
They have very different focuses to an extent with the player character though, and how the story is told through them. With in Elder Scrolls, you're always sort of the chosen one, and you're the person who has to fulfill their destiny and save the world and stuff. And while that is incredibly compelling and is the basis for a lot of really good stories, for me that's personally not what I sort of look for in an RPG like this. I think in a way it sort of limits your role-playing ability to an extent within the main narrative, whereas in Fallout, in my favorite Fallout is New Vegas, you get shot in the head, you're a courier, and then the game is just you can do what you want. You can fulfill this grand master plan if you want. You don't even have to bother with it. You could just sort of go off and explore your own story, and I think Bethesda did kind of drop the ball a little bit with Fallout 3 when they did sort of rely on that. You're the chosen one. You need to go help. And Fox is you need to do this because it's your destiny. And that sort of felt a bit false and not entirely what Fallout is to me.
I will drop in, I'll let you respond to this, but I also drop in a thing that Ash said, which is, you guys have already argued a little bit about this before we came in, about Fallout is about the world, whereas Scrolls is about the individual. What do you think of that?
This is something I read online, and I thought about it for a bit, because I think I mentioned it in the other video.
Yep.
But what I was reading about was Fallout is essentially a game of experiencing the world, because everything is about the world's effect on you. It's a big irradiated landscape. It's about surviving in the wasteland, and Fallout 4 is about building settlements. It's all about your place in rebuilding society, which is essentially an experience of the world. It's not a personal experience, which it is. It is a personal experience.
That's totally what 76 is as well.
Yeah, exactly. So it's your place in this world that Bethesda have built, or other companies as well. But in this case, that Bethesda have built, that you can go and experience. Whereas Elder Scrolls is essentially you are the chosen one. It's about you crafting your destiny down to the very star sign you're born under, in Oblivion and stuff. It proper goes down to the roots on customization and how your experience can be drawn out of that. And Fallout obviously has those elements, otherwise it wouldn't be a successful game that people want to dive into and stuff. But essentially that's where they branch out and people enjoy things a little bit differently.
See, this is a perfect way of drilling down to a different thing, because that gets to the core of which is a better role-playing game.
Yeah.
Because in terms of character customization, you were saying you can play obviously you can play Scrolls in a million different ways. For me personally, I never got that much variety out of the way that I play the Fallout games. But I don't know if you would contest that, because obviously there are so many perks that you can get.
Yeah.
Do you feel there is just as much customization to Fallout's characters as there are to Scrolls?
Well, it depends what you're talking about, really. If you're talking about base customization, there sort of isn't, because you only really get to customize armor. You don't get to customize. You can't be a lizard man in Fallout. Unfortunately, I'd love to be a ghoul, but I think in the ways you can impact the story and you can sort of manipulate it, I think that's just as good as anything in any kind of Elder Scrolls game. In a way, I think there is a lot of way to maneuver these worlds, except maybe in Fallout 4 where they take a lot of the speech options away, which
yes. Would you agree with that in terms of the way that the character customization goes forward, or do you think Scrolls, it just needs to be championed as something that does something that Fallout doesn't do?
I think Fallout does have these customization options, but I do think they separate in the points that we've brought up.
Yeah.
And who wouldn't want to be a Khajiit or an Argonian against like an all person? Like
it's very true.
It's true.
Like that's where the fun stuff.
So
happens.
there was another thing as well in terms of, because obviously both have been made by Bethesda. Elder Scrolls Online was ZeniMax, I think, or In Exile, one of the two, ZeniMax, I think. But you were talking about the way that Bethesda have changed their game mechanics over time. They've sort of streamlined a lot of things out, and they've started aiming for wider. I mean, Fallout 4, like they had a massive gutting of the amount of text that's in that game in terms of what your character's going to say, and we just got things like the sarcastic or sarcasm option. You look at Fallout 76 on the other side, or the continuation of that is just this massive online thing, and you just make your own fun, you make your own conversations, and you figure it out that way. That was something that you were bringing up in terms of the way that Bethesda have changed their approach to these franchises.
Yeah, well, this is sort of like the big difference between Fallout and Elder Scrolls for me isn't sort of necessarily in the mechanics or in the kind of lore and like the more subjective things. It's the way, and I'm talking about Bethesda specifically. I'm not talking about like Fallout 1 and 2, even though they are sort of, they should be championed, and Fallout 1 is like an amazing experience. But the way Bethesda have treated them both going forward and sort of stripping away the RPG elements, I think is more evident in Fallout, because in general they're sort of just more experimental with Fallout, for better and worse. When you get an Elder Scrolls game, even Elder Scrolls Online to an extent, you sort of know exactly what you're getting. There is a sense of expectation behind each one of these installments. When Elder Scrolls 6 comes out, it could theoretically be 10 years since Skyrim. And people will expect a certain thing and expect certain things to not change. Whereas when it comes to Fallout, even in the individual games, I think they're more open to experimentation, again, for better or worse.
I was going to say, is that a positive or a negative?
This is the thing, so they plug in sort of settlements, and they plug in sort of these weird Minecraft things, and then they're willing to take risks on Fallout Shelter and Fallout 76, and it doesn't always work, but I think that sort of does feed into what you like and what you don't like about each series. Like if you enjoy the Elder Scrolls, you know exactly what you're getting, and you could argue that Bethesda have dropped the ball with Fallout, but I sort of like the way they constantly try to reshape what Fallout is in a way.
Because that's the thing. You made the point that like Scrolls is Bethesda's baby. So they sort of, it seems like if you take your point forward, like they treat it as like the thing they don't want to mess with as much. Whereas Fallout they acquired from Black Isle, so they can kind of afford to experiment a bit more with it. And so have you kind of felt that the same way going forward?
I definitely agree. Definitely agree that Fallout is the experimental one, and that you can get a lot more different experiences from it because of the way that they're willing to say, hey, let's try this, let's do this. Fallout 76 doesn't feel like an experiment because it's a rip-off of the Elder Scrolls Online just to get onto their properties. Like, you know what I mean? They've got Elder Scrolls Online now. They're like, well, let's do 76, and it didn't work. But Elder Scrolls didn't work when it first went
I was going to say that wasn't very good at launch.
No, so like, fair enough. Hopefully it gets better. But what I think, I had a point here, and it's slowly moving from my mind. What I think is important to both of these games, it's come back, is that the Elder Scrolls, because of when it's set. It's a classic fantasy game, yes, and there is expectations that come with that, and there is things that you're going to know and hold to a high quality when you want a fantasy game, because there's so many of them. You expect good sword fighting and this, that, and the other. But with the Elder Scrolls, because of when it is set, and it's got all these thousands of years that are like years ago, and because of how wide-spanning the lore is and how invested they are in creating a backstory that's in thousands of books and different cave paintings and everything, they can drop you in at any point across their timeline, and it'll be interesting, and there's a lot wider scope of years they can do and advance things within this fictional society, whereas Fallout, you're always going to be in the irradiated wasteland, you're always going to be in the green and brown lands of Fallout. That's it, that's all it's going to be. It's never going to be like, you're not going to ever see before the war, because you did that slightly in Fallout 4 when you were in Small and everything.
That's a really good point, though. Unless you want to,
I was going to say this is sort of, to me, that's why I think Bethesda keep trying to experiment with what Fallout is as opposed to iconography, because I'm not sure they entirely kind of grasp it. They know that people sort of like the Brotherhood of Steel. They know people sort of like the Vault Boy and Pip Boys and stuff like that. But like you said, the lore around it isn't kind of that flexible, and they sort of seem to be averse to kind of taking risks with it. Like when Obsidian came back in and did Fallout New Vegas, and they kind of made the Brotherhood of Steel, it was sort of close to how they were represented in sort of the original Fallout games. And yet, when Bethesda came back to do Fallout 4, they kind of drew that back a little bit and kind of was like, no, this is how they should be. This is how we've depicted them as. And they're kind of more rigid with the lore in that way. And I don't know whether that's just because they don't have enough to draw from, or whether just because that's, to them, what Fallout is.
It's strange because obviously, you know, there's the sheer fact of the matter that Bethesda acquired Fallout. There is no more like original stuff to pull from. They've been given they bought the IP, and they're the ones that have to sort of introduce new elements and contest with the original Fallout fans that want it to be in a certain way.
Yeah.
And so that kind of leads me into another thing, which is just talking about general art direction. Like, do you feel that Elder Scrolls has an identifiable, like, it just has a franchise identity?
Yeah, 100%. Like, I think. Sorry, finish up.
No, you pretty much leap in. But the thing with Fallout is, like, obviously you've got the Pip-Boys, you've got the sort of retro 50s, like, Americana, like, old school look. Like, if you look at certain styles, like, I mean, there's the next game that Obsidian are doing, like, some of the imagery from that's already leaked, and people are already going, that's a bit Fallout-ish.
It is a little bit,
And as soon as you see, like retro sort of fonts, it's like, that's Fallout style. Whereas, like, so I've very, like, seldom seen, like, someone go, oh, that's very Scroll style. So that's kind of what I was getting at. But
that's fair enough. That is fair enough. My point would be that this the beautiful landscapes is identifiably Skyrim and Oblivion and all that. That is their thing. But 100% Daedra, like Daedric stuff, Daedric armor, like that is so original and interesting and like a real fascinating part of that lore and a real staple image as well. Like it's proper looks like Balrog sort of stuff. Like again, I'm drawing from another source to say that it looks original, but like I think that
more original in the game world.
Yeah, so I would say Daedra and that sort of thing. That's 100% their thing. The Oblivion gates, all that sort of stuff. Oblivion was their like tour de force game. Like that's my favorite game ever. That is their best game. I love Skyrim. Oblivion was the best one, and that definitely has an identifiable. Whoa, this is the Elder Scrolls. And then you look at stuff like Morrowind as well. That's like, that 100% has a game style. But maybe you're right that the whole series itself
like that's the thing. It's almost like if you said what's Final Fantasy's identifiable style. It's like they don't necessarily have one.
Purple.
Yeah, there's like weird ass kinks and like sort of metrosexual main characters and stuff.
I
and
said
like
pink.
Well, pink is. I thought you said kink. I was like, there's a lot of kink in Final Fantasy, to be fair. But that's the thing with Scrolls is that they've kind of got a different visual identity for each game. Like Morrowind is incredibly brown and kind of grey, but it has that like I don't know, like from the earth, like naturalistic kind of
like
botanical look. And then Skyrim's all up in the mountains and Viking and things like that. Whereas Fallout, if you sort of like lay them all out in like a line and go like screenshots from each one, like if you have to minus the rendering side of it, like Fallout 3 to Fallout 4 isn't a massive leap, and then Fallout and then even to 76 is like, well, the contrast's higher, and then that's
there's some nice flower colours.
Yeah, exactly. So it's like I think you go on.
I was going to say I think that's sort of what Ash kind of like links into what Ash was talking about with the sort of lore of Elder Scrolls perhaps being potentially not richer. I'm not sure if it's richer, but I think it's more flexible and like you have more to do, so you can constantly reinvent like these different locations. You can set the game hundreds of years in the future and reference past events, but then have your own distinct style. Whereas Fallout is often set around a similar time period. You know, there's obviously discrepancies, but different cities. But you've still got the same visual iconography. You still got the Pip-Boy. You still got the
crumbled buildings.
And you've got a bit of color now, which is nice. But you got like the death claws. I think that's cool because it is instantly and identifiably Fallout. And I think there is depth to it as well, as opposed to just being a thing that's easy to sell. You know, I'm going to put the Vault Boy on like this sticker and
I call him Pip Boy. What a noob I am. It's Vault Boy, isn't it?
The Pip Boy.
The Pip Boy.
That's interesting in terms of some of the best and most talked about stuff in Fallout is like the stories that are inside the vaults. But I feel like that's like this level of like storytelling heft that like Scrolls doesn't have like an impactful story necessarily. I like the bit when you go up and meet Parthenax and you have a nice little revelation in Skyrim.
It doesn't have an impactful story.
Not in like a Last of Us or like a, like what go on.
No, to be fair, that's because
I don't think it's good.
It's not like a gut punch. Oh my god!
That's what I mean.
It's you get. I think the way you've got to look for that is the factions.
Yeah, and if I was going to say, if you delve into like the books and you make a point of like spending some time in a certain township, you'll pick up on all sorts of like interpersonal relationships that are in that town. And you'll find out someone's been killed by someone or whatever, and you'll kind of have that reaction of like, oh man, like I feel something on like a human level. But in Fallout, you kind of get them delivered to you more like if you like on the storytelling side. If you go into the vaults, you'll go in there and have an authored experience that is delivered to you, and you'll take it in, and you'll get more of a feel for where people used to be beforehand. All that ties into going forward in terms of the chronology of Fallout, because there's only so far forward past the bombs they can go before there's too much civilization, then it's not Fallout again. Yeah. So it's like, does that fundamentally limit what they can do going forward?
I'd say no, I don't, because I know they pulled back with Fallout 76 and gone immediately like, you're the first humans rediscovering civilization, but I think you can get to the point where you're kind of rebuilding. It doesn't have to be in the immediacy of the post-apocalyptic apocalyptic landscape where everyone's just kind of refinding civilization. I do think Fallout can exist like long beyond that, and sort of when you are trying to rebuild and you have like these factions that are sort of getting up and running, I think that works fine. I think if anything that would be liberating for the franchise, because then you do get the original stories and you are just paying homage or trying to find ways to reappropriate these past like factions and try to make them fit with the story you want to tell. So I don't know if you do get far enough where it stops being Fallout in general.
I guess they go too far, they bomb it again and start.
They bomb it again. You just drop more nukes.
Well, I mean, they have the whole thing, war no changes, and it can just be cyclical and bombs happen again. Everything gets irradiated all over again.
Yeah.
But that's the thing, in terms of like what you look forward to in a new Elder Scrolls installment, it's always going to be, well, assumedly it's going to be this, like Final Fantasy, it's this whole new installment where like you're not necessarily looking for a continuation of an overarching story, you're looking for a bunch of new stories in that world.
Yeah.
Versus Fallout, there's kind of that assumption that they're going to delve back into what happened before the bombs went off and the Great War and all that kind of thing. And so like I just kind of wonder where they're going to go, like in terms of the new franchises, like you know, how much story can you pick from?
I would say like a thing for Fallout that I think is to its detriment is that it bases itself in like a faux version of our history. It's too closely tied to reality, in my opinion. But that's coming at it from a subjective point of view. I just don't think that's. They've kind of shot themselves in the foot with going backwards there because it's what we already know. And
well, that ties back into what you were saying about like, well, what we've been saying the whole thing, that like it's not their baby. So like because it's an IP that they've acquired, they have no like, you know, like George Lucas type figure to go to and be like, okay, we've expanded like all these plot threads. We want something new, and then they have to be the ones that inject it in, and then there's like maybe a potential loss of like authority if they do that because they're not, you know, they aren't the forebears of the franchise.
Yeah, so. Admittedly, I don't think that's stopped them in the past so far. Like they have sort of bent the law and sort of like changed things in a way that fits them more than it would have fit all the Fallout games, for better than the worst, even if they have like had like characters that reappear and stuff like that. I think it's difficult. Like, when you get like stuff like the Elder Scrolls, there are things you expect to see, especially if you played the most recent ones, Oblivion and Skyrim. You expect to see the guilds, you jump in, you see how they're doing now. But I think sort of the fun is sort of jumping in these new regions, jumping ahead of time and seeing how those established figures are sort of holding up. Like, you know what I mean? Like how the Dark Brotherhood is sort of still operating now. Like, I think that's really fascinating. I think you can have that with Fallout while still moving forward. That's
what I would love to see. I would actually like them to do like a massive time jump in Fallout and then be like, these are the remnants of what you would think of as Fallout lore, and we're going to pick and choose, and we'll sort of put our own stamp on it a bit more, because then you get to delve into all sorts of like socioeconomic stuff, like what the Metro series does, where it's like you've got these emerging pockets of humanity and religions and cultures emerging back to the surface, and then how do they meld based on the fractures of like knowledge that they had when they were underground. And then there's way more storytelling possibilities for that. But I wonder, in terms of like, obviously Fallout 76 has been a bit of a bomb, so it's like how many lessons did they take from that and to inject into the new one? So I think we should talk about where they're going to go from here. So you can talk about Elder Scrolls 6 first, and we'll come back to Fallout. What do you want to see?
Where can it go? It can go everywhere, is the thing. It looks like they're going to go back to Daggerfall sort of stuff. Which
Bring that artwork back.
What is it, Hammerfell and all that? Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So like it looks like it's very much going to go in that direction. What I actually am desperate to see, maybe not in Elder Scrolls 6, but in the future, is the Akaviri War and them coming back, because there's all that lore that they've seeded about them coming back at some point, and that's where they're going to introduce a load of weird, crazy characters, like from all these random islands, like the tiger people and the dragon that stuff, and the monkey warriors and everything. And I think that would be it's a really big risk for them, though. It's a really big risk. And like you say with Fallout and Elder Scrolls, it's not one they're likely to take in full committed form.
Although, looking at Fallout 76, like that's got some of the most over-the-top bosses that they've ever done.
Yeah, that's
like
true.
The Mothman and the weird glab with the fishbowl head.
So much. I love them.
Yeah, and it's like, obviously, like I said, like things that they can take from Fallout 76 is like more interesting, unique, and memorable enemies, because like obviously there's a whole bunch of them in Skyrim too. But like you said, if they start teasing footage of Elder Scrolls 6, and it's like, you know, the tiger warriors and the monkey men and like whatever from High Rock and stuff, like there's totally a way to carve out Elder Scrolls 6's like unique artistic direction straight away. Whereas I think it's sometimes harder to do in Fallout, but you can contest this with Fallout 5.
Well, yes, I don't know what the hell Fallout 5 is going to be, and frankly, I'm quite scared of it, because I think after the reception of Fallout 76, Bethesda will want to sort of save some face and kind of go back to what people really liked. Because, like I said earlier, this has been sort of a bunch of experiments and they're kind of putting the feelers out to find out what people did enjoy. I think they might have over-egged it a bit with Fallout 4. They added in a lot of base building experiences.
Who was requesting that?
That's the thing.
While we're on.
No one sort of requested it.
No.
And then no one the backlash was big, but that game was still really good in my opinion. And it still scored well, it still sold well, people still liked it. They didn't like that part of it. And now I think Bethesda are only just getting the message now that people don't like it in Fallout 76 and they're sort of realizing what people actually did like. And it's kind of stressful that it took them so long. But I do like that they're experimenting. I think there is a reason why we haven't sort of seen a spin-off for the Elder Scrolls other than the Elder Scrolls Online. There's a reason why they keep remastering Skyrim is what I'm trying to say.
Oh, God,
because that whole series so far is kind of untainted. You know, like I said before, people know what they want from that. They have it nailed down. I think that's why the confidence is way higher in the Elder Scrolls 6 than it will be in Fallout 5. But I think, hopefully, they might have got the message.
I mean, like you said, we can't have another Fallout 76. So
no, they can't.
Whatever they do for Fallout 5 has to be something where they've really took the time and listened to the community and looked at the things that people want to see from the lore and the fan bases.
You know, what's really interesting to me is, I was thinking about this last night before, in preparation for this, in that I was saying earlier that the next Elder Scrolls could be theoretically 10 years after Skyrim. And there will be such excitement for that. And I was sort of thinking about Fallout 5, because between Starfield, Elder Scrolls, and then Elder Scrolls 6, and then whatever, who knows when Fallout 5, a proper Fallout 5, will come out. It could theoretically, probably will be 10 years after Fallout 4. But will that same excitement be there? You know what I mean?
I think it's all in how it's presented, because
the thing
that they seem to have hit with 76 is they've gone, here's Fallout in the most base sense. Here's Fallout. Here's this radiated wasteland. Here's a bunch of creatures to go kill. You can dress up in your vault stuff. You've got the vault boy in the iconography, in the art direction, and all that stuff. Here you go. And everyone's just kind of gone, okay, why? And they went, because Fallout. And that's not enough. And that's the thing. They need to, like you said, we don't know whether they know how much, what to focus on in terms of why people love Fallout. They talked about it in Danny O'Dwyer's No Clip documentary in terms of why they wanted to acquire the IP in the first place. And so I think they're kind of recreating that, the stories that they told amongst their friends when they were playing it when they were younger. You can kind of argue that's why 76 is so open-ended. But I wonder where they go.
I have a question, because I have played a bit of all the Fallout games, but there's never been set anywhere other than America, has it?
No.
Which is, I think, something important that they could change, because if they take it to a whole new setting and it turns out crap, then they can just go back to America and be like, it's fine. But I think that would be the biggest way Fallout can make something, again, experimental, different, and bring all the things that they like from the other games into a new setting and make it exciting, and say, oh, this didn't get hit as badly, so there's a lot of different things here, or it doesn't have to be the green, brown, deserted wasteland.
It kind of depends how much they think that the West, and in America in particular, is fundamental to Fallout's appeal. Because there's always been rumors before each installment that, it's going to be set in China, or it's going to be set in Russia, or it's going to do something like that, and they never come true.
He's right. I know I've just championed how Bethesda are experimental with their games.
Yes.
And I think that, while interesting, might be one step too far. There was a cool interview that I think Rockstar did a few years ago. Obviously, when every new GTA game comes out and people are like, you should set it somewhere else. You should set it in London or something. Yeah. And I think the developers just said, well, if you do that, you sort of lose part of what makes Grand Theft Auto, because that's sort of this play up of the American dream in Americana. And I think Fallout is sort of similar in the way it is kind of, like you said, it's rooted in a history that isn't entirely real, but is sort of it resembles something that we can kind of grasp onto. And it does use those themes of Americana and sort of the 50s to sort of jump off of and tell stories. Nuclear family. And I think if you do go to another country, whilst you wouldn't lose everything that Fallout is, I think that changes it perhaps to a point where it's kind of beyond recognition. I think it'll be great for in some form to know what's going on, because you do kind of know you get glimpses of that over the series, but to set an entire game there, It would be very interesting,
That's the kind of
but
risk
maybe
I would
that's
like
a step
them.
too far.
Yeah, that's kind of the risk I would like them to take. But you guys can let us know what you think down in the comments or find us on social media as well. We've been babbling for a good half an hour, but now it's over to you. Elder Scrolls or Fallout? We'll just see because we've already shouted both sides in this lovely debate. So this has been the WhatCulture Gaming Podcast. I've been your host, Scott Tailford, joined by Ash.
Hello, I've been Ash, and Scrolls is best.
It is. And also joined by Josh.
Hello, Fallout is really good and the best.
It also is. And we'll catch you next time. Bye.
Bye!